Hi and welcome back to the channel. I think on the last video I said that it was going to be a minute before you saw me back in the garage. Well, today it's been raining since like 5 a.m. and it's actually nice and cool out here. So the lighting is usually a little bit better. Look, man, this is where we do these, right? So I'm happy to be back in the garage. I don't know about the next video, but on this one, we're back in the lab. Today, I'm going to do a video on how to put on a good structured group ride. You know, I've come to the realization that I've done videos on how to develop the skills to do a group ride, what is a group ride, how to ride in a group ride, but I actually haven't talked about how to put on a good group ride. So, what is a group ride? A group ride is where cyclists obviously get together and ride as a group with the objective of safety in numbers, fellowship, a good vigorous workout, and sometimes you may be able to attach adventure onto it. Now, one of the things that sometimes happens with group rides is there's kind of like different levels of it. There's very intense group rides where it's literally a race, and I've talked about those and even shown videos about those. And then you have my favorite, which are structured group rides, which there's a certain amount of consistency and predictability to them, and consequently I think those are safer and offer kind of like the best of both worlds. And the third type of group ride is where people just kind of like, you know, ride around, sightsee as a group. So today I'm going to talk about the one right in the middle, the structured group ride that most people are familiar with. It could be single pace line, double pace line, or it could be pack riding like a Peloton. As a result of the previous videos that I've done on the subject, you'll get a pretty good idea of the amount of skills or the skill set that a person needs to develop in order to do those effectively. So, characteristics of group rides. On the extreme end of group rides, you have drop rides, which a drop ride is, you know, put your big boy pants on, you're responsible for yourself, make sure that you know the route, that you know where you are, and you know what you're getting into. If you get shelled off the back of the group, don't expect anybody to wait for you. On drop rides, even if you get a flat, you're kind of on your own. The second type is the one we're going to spend most of our time talking about. It's where it's very structured. There's an advertised pace. There's a designated route. And consequently, it's kind of like a community beehive thing where we're going to make sure that you're taken care of. Now, there's one caveat to that. If you're putting on a group ride like what I'm describing, please make sure that in addition to the structure and the route, please make sure that you're posting what your rolling pace is. Make sure that you're sticking to that as much as possible. Now, I understand if your advertised rolling pace is 19 to 22, I think everybody understands that there's going to be speed creep where it might go up to 23, it could go up to 24, not necessarily because of a surge, just because there might have been a tailwind or a slight decline or something like that. But for the most part, under normal effort, you want to, if you say it's 19 to 22, you want to make sure that you're sticking to 19 to 22. Here are the elements that you need to have to make sure that you structure your group ride properly. Number one, make sure that you have a clear route. Now, in your route, you want to make sure that you have options. We have a couple bailout points on our ride where we can say, you know what, we're going to cut the ride short, or we're going to cut that loop off. So if we say our ride is 47 miles, by the time we get back to the start-stop area, we might be at 42 miles, only because something looked ominous with the weather. And just to ensure the safety and comfort of everybody involved, we made a decision. But whatever route we have chosen for that day, it's a route that's advertised, that people know about so that they can plan accordingly. Route. Next, pace. I already mentioned this. Make sure that whatever pace that you're advertising, be very clear about it and make sure that you're sticking to it. Next, leaders or ride guides. In our ride, we typically have 4 or 5 people that we would consider ride leaders, ride stewards, ride Sherpas, whatever you want to call them. There are people who make sure that the ride goes off without a hitch. For example, I am one of the designated ride leaders on our signature ride, which is a Saturday ride. And one of the things that I do is I ensure that we have a proper and effective warm-up, that we don't just take off real hard from the gate. I also make sure that the speed doesn't get too out of hand in the areas where we're supposed to be rolling normal. Out on the front for most of the ride. There are times I may be second, third wheel. I may also actually go all the way to the back of the ride just to make sure that everything is okay. Now, the reason I'm mentioning that is because if you're a ride leader, you shouldn't feel under pressure to be on the front for the entire ride. That's ridiculous. But you should be in a position to make sure that the objectives of the ride and the description of the ride are being followed. And you don't have to be on the front to do that. You can do that from second wheel, third wheel, or from the back. And if something changes, you need to come to the front, make sure that you can come to the front. So don't be intimidated about raising your hand and designating yourself as a ride leader because you feel like, oh, I can't be on the front for the entire 50 or 60 miles. You don't have to be on the front for the entire 50 or 60 miles. Okay? So we have the ride leaders who do that, but we also have people who monitor the ride in the middle and monitor the ride in the back just to make sure that people aren't getting shelled, that we don't have mechanicals and things like that. You can actually recruit, if you're the ride leader, you can actually recruit people from your crew and say, hey, I need help with making sure that everybody's okay in the back. Do you mind keeping an eye on the middle? And one of the things that these people always also serve as is if somebody's doing something that's not part of what the ride would be or should be doing, they should also have the ability to speak out and correct improper behavior. Ask them to correct or to not do the behavior. It ain't kindergarten, but we just want to make sure that everybody is safe. So that is part of being a ride leader and ride leader assistance and what the guys do as far as that's concerned. Next is a rest stop. For example, if it's going to be like a 50-mile ride, make sure that you have a rest stop at 25 or 30-mile mark. And make sure that at that rest stop, people can at least fill up their water bottles. Preferably, they'd be able to purchase some snacks, bananas, or electrolytes if need be. 7-Elevens, gas stations, supermarkets work great for that. And certainly make sure that there's facilities for people to be able to use the restroom. So don't have a rest stop that's just in the middle of the stick somewhere where the guys can naturally go to the bathroom, but the girls can't. Okay, so that's some of the aspects in terms of the things that you need to pay attention in terms of how you're going to structure your group ride. Next, safety. And this is a big thing for us because one of the things that we always say at the beginning of our rides is our goal is to ensure that people come back to the start point in the same condition in which they've left, maybe a little bit more tired, but we don't want to have injuries or accidents happen because we're not following common sense safety rules. For example, we don't run lights on Level Up Saturday. If you're doing a structured ride, you can't have it where people are running lights. You've got some guys want to use the running of the light as a breakaway to get away from the group, and to me those things are nonsense. Don't do that. You put yourself at risk, you put the group at risk, and also you start to give a bad testimony of what cyclists is all about. Now, if you're in the middle of rural Anytown, USA, and it's a blinking red light and there's no cars for days, use common sense in terms of how you proceed after a safe stop, but don't necessarily sit there and wait for 15 minutes for the light to change. Again, it's a safety issue more than anything else. Here in South Florida, we have a lot of traffic density. We make sure that we obey the traffic rules in terms of stop signs and stoplights. Next, no swarming of cars. We stop behind the cars. I don't care if it's a group of, if it's 3 cars at the light or if it's 15 cars before we get through the light. As a group, we don't pass the cars. We stay behind the cars, which is something completely different than you do if you're riding by yourself and there's a designated bike lane. The reason why we stay behind the cars is because we don't want to force or inconvenience the vehicles to pass us a second time. We're trying to be good neighbors and good stewards and being considerate of our fellow motorists. Again, just exercise a little bit of common sense as far as that's concerned. Next, figuring out when to take the lane. In designing our routes, we make sure that for the most part, we ride either where there's very, very little traffic or there's an extremely wide bike lane. Even if it's a 1-lane or a regular 2-lane road, we make sure that when we take those kind of roads, that we're either going to get single file, or we make sure that there's a lot of room for the vehicles to be able to pass us and to be able to do so safely without either endangering the group or endangering them as motorists. And this brings back one of the points that I was making early. One of the reasons why we advertise our pace and we stick as close as we possibly can to our pace is because we want to keep the group together. It's a mistake to me when you're group riding and you have, you start out as a group of 40 and then you got 5 guys that broke away, you got 5 guys up the road, then you got 2 or 3 guys who are trying to bridge across, then you got 2 more guys who are trying to bridge across but they didn't make it, and then you have the rest of the pack with a few guys who are falling off the back. That creates an issue not only for your team where you're no longer getting the benefit of riding safety in numbers, but it also creates an issue for the motorists as they keep coming across splintered groups of cyclists. Now, most rides will have kind of like a turn-up zone where for a period of time it may look like what I just described, but that shouldn't be what your ride looks like all the time. The best you can, make sure that you do what you can to keep it together. And again, that's why I'm emphasizing the importance of advertising your route and advertising your pace. One of the things that we do before our ride starts is we look around for new people and we ask them to introduce themselves, and we make sure that they're aware of what we're going to be doing. And if they can't do it, we let them know we don't have a SAG. This may not be the right ride for you. And we explain to them that we have rides where you can come join us and learn the skills, develop your fitness a little bit. But this isn't the ride for you today, because if you're in trouble after 2 or 3 miles, there's no way that you're going to make the 45 miles. Okay, starting your ride. We begin with a safety speak before every ride, and we talk about the objectives, we talk about the pace, we talk about the route, we talk about what we want to have happen in terms of behavior and what is acceptable, what is unacceptable to us. That's the first thing that we do. The next thing that we do, and this is so important, we have a warm-up. We have a warm-up that's about 5 miles. And we start to pick up the pace a little bit towards the end of the warm-up, but for the most part, the warm-up is the warm-up. Warm-up does 2 things. One, it warms you up. And this is important because most people don't jump out of their car ready to go at 150 watts, okay? So we start with a very mild warm-up. The pace is controlled, and we stick to that. The next benefit of the warm-up is it gets people used to the idea of riding around each other. A lot of people, this may be their second or third time. If you jump in right away and people are on the rivet from the jump, that's not necessarily going to be good for them. So it gets people used to the idea of just being around other cyclists and the idea that, yeah, we're riding as a group. So safety speech. Next, we have our warm-up. And then from there, we proceed to whatever the structure of the ride is going to be. Like I said, whether it's single pace line, double pace line, or pack riding, and we get going and we make sure that we execute the ride that we needed to. So that's it. That's how we put together a good structured group ride. Thanks for tuning in to the channel once again, guys. If this is your first time visiting, please like. Oh, you know something I found out is that YouTube doesn't give like quotas. You can like away and it does nothing. It doesn't take anything away from you. So please like the video. Also, there's no subscription quotas. So subscribe away. Not only because it helps us to grow the channel, but also subscribing and hitting the notification icon. It keeps you in the know in terms of when we're coming out with new videos. We're going to continue to inform, instruct, inspire, and I want you to be blessed.